I was really excited to make this video, but last week, as I was trying to make it, a certain Sith Lord just took over the video and made it his own. So I'm going to be making it today on today's episode of Star Wars Nerds and Geeks. It's 40 BBY. You are a mercenary who is hired to protect a shipment of cargo to escort it to its final destination. Because, 40 BBY, the Republic's not helping its merchants out. It's just helping the big corporations, not the little guys. So it's up to people like you to protect the shipments. But, that's good because you get a lot of job opportunities that way. So, as you are escorting the ship through hyperspace, there's a little malfunction on the ship. It's a little must have been like sabotaged or something. The engines have blown, and you need to do some quick repairs. So you exit hyperspace, and you're just floating over the moon of Endor. You see what's happening here? So you're floating over the moon of Endor, and the people are trying to fix the ship, and then suddenly a gang of pirates comes out of hyperspace and attacks you. Long story short, the shipment is gone. You're the only survivor. You got into an escape pod and you fled the battlefield, and now you are on the planet of Endor. The pirates have left and now you are safe. Well, somewhat safe. You have crash landed onto the moon of Endor. You have very limited supplies. You have a blaster and a vibroblade. You have about a week's worth of water. You have you have a little bit of food, and you have a beacon to call for help. So, of course, you activate the beacon, but there's no one around. It's going to take a very long time for somebody to get to you since nobody's really paying attention to the beacon. So, until somebody comes to save you, you have to survive on Endor. Doesn't seem that hard, right? I mean, looking at the movies, all you have to do is befriend the Ewoks, and they'll cook some of your friends, and you'll have lunch and dinner and breakfast, and it'll be an amazing time, right? Well, not so fast. See, the way I see it at least, is Princess Leia and the Rebels, they got really lucky. Ewoks are very hostile and dangerous creatures. Princess Leia was lucky enough to meet the young and naive Ewok, Wicket W. Warwick. She was able to gain his trust because, as I said, the Ewok was a little youngster. So she gains his trust, and now she's able to gain the Ewok's trust. But that's pretty lucky. We're going to assume that you are not that lucky. You have only yourself to rely on. You have the stuff that you carried with you. So you have a blaster, a vibroblade, and a little bit of food and water. And you just got to survive. So how do you do that? Well, the very first thing that we need to do to survive is get food and water. Now, the water's a kind of tough part. On Earth, water's not that big of a deal because Earth is 70 some odd percent water. However, on Endor is only 8% water. So you're going to have a hard time finding water. So you better either conserve your water or find a way to replenish it, or maybe you'll get lucky enough to find a stream or something. But water is going to be a big problem, and if you can't find water, well, you're doomed. So there's no real tips for that. You're just going to have to look around for water and try and save and conserve the water that you have. And that's going to be really tough because, like I said, it's only 8% water. But food is the easier part because there's wildlife everywhere in Endor. Endor is a very populated planet. There are a lot of animals and species on that planet. So you won't go hungry. You can really just hunt whatever you want. There's tons of small little critters like squirrel-like critters that you can eat and just build a fire and cook them. It seems it's not going to be that difficult. But how do you catch these creatures? Because you only have a gun and you only have a vibroblade, so you aren't going to be able to catch them most likely. You might be able to shoot a little critter, but fried critters that are shot from a blaster, they don't taste that good. So you're going to most likely want to kill it with your vibroblade, which means you're going to have to trap it. So for this one, take a hint from the Ewoks. You're going to want to cut up some of the trees and the branches to make and weave a little trap, and that is how you can catch the animals. However you do it, whether it's like you're sitting by the trap and when an animal comes, you pull on a string and it collapses in on the animal and it traps them, or maybe you have all that stuff laid over a little pit, and when the animal walks on it, it falls through the pit. Anything like that would work. Just make sure that you have a good way to trap it so you can kill it with the vibroblade and you can eat it for lunch and dinner and breakfast. So now that we have sort of steady supply of food and water, again, water is definitely iffy and it's going to be hard to be catching every single meal, but if you can do that, the next thing you need to do is have shelter. So for shelter, you are going to only have one option. There are some caves around, but those aren't going to be very plentiful. So the best place for you to live in is going to be the trees. As you may have noticed, Endor is pretty forested. There are some trees every now and then. You're going to want to take advantage of those trees. So the trees, they're very useful because there's all these giant monsters almost that you're going to be facing, such as the Gorax, stuff like that. So you're going to want to watch out for these guys, and the trees are a very good place to be, especially if you can like camouflage yourself in the tree. You will be able to protect yourself from all of those threats. So in the trees, you're going to want to get high up, but you're not going to want to get too high up that if you fall, it's deadly, because you're going to be jury rigging all of this. Odds are it's not going to be the most sturdy thing in the world. So you're going to want to make sure that you're high enough up to protect yourself from predators, but that you're low enough that you wouldn't die if you fell. So once you get to once you kind of find your place that you want to be, you're going to want to make sure that the trees around you have branches that you can that will support your weight, and then probably just cut down some branches and make a little shelter around there. It doesn't have to be like super fancy. Just put like maybe a little roof over your head, though it's so forested in Endor you might not even need a roof. Honestly, the best thing to do, in my opinion, would just be to create a platform for you to sleep on. The rest of it you don't really need. You don't need walls or a roof. You're not going to be spending that much time up in the trees. The only time you'll be up there is when you're sleeping or when you need to run away from something. Most of the time you'll be on the ground, just hunting for your food, cooking your food, or making sure the beacon stays alive, getting water, whatever. You're going to be on the ground most of the time. So up in the trees, it doesn't need to be that fancy, just enough for you to sleep in safely. We're all good, right? Well, not even close. That was the basic survival things that you need, and that's pretty much what it'll be like on any planet that you crash land on. But Endor is different, and it's different because of the species that inhabit it. Now, there are three main species that you'll need to watch out for, in my opinion. There's the Yuzums. These are relatively rare on Endor. You may have actually seen them in Jabba's palace, singing in the Max Rebo band. But on Endor, they're relatively rare because the Yuzums kind of tour the galaxy. But if you do find them, that's actually really good news for you because the Yuzums are generally pretty peaceful, and they would probably help you at least a little bit. They could point you in the right direction. They could show you some food or water. So if you find Yuzums, definitely try to talk to them. Maybe they don't know basic, and that would be a problem. Do pictographs with them, whatever you can, because Yuzums will be helpful, most likely at least. Now, second species that you'll have to watch out for that I just talked about is the Gorax. The Gorax are the Ewoks' enemies. Gorax are essentially just giant Ewok eating hunters. These guys are dangerous. They are really big and they are really strong, so just make sure that you don't upset any of them and you'll probably be good. They are relatively rare, so you probably won't have to worry about them too much because the number one thing you'll have to watch out for is Ewoks. Ewoks are not cuddly teddy bears as they look like in the movie. Ewoks are vicious man-eating hunters. They will devour you. They Ewoks are very, very, very dangerous. They do not like outsiders. If they don't recognize you, they're most likely going to attack you. They don't like foreigners. They don't like invaders. They hated the Empire. So many survey teams that were sent to Endor to figure out if it was a good place for the Death Star, so many of them were killed by Ewoks. Princess Leia, as I mentioned earlier, was only able to gain the trust of Ewoks because she first met a young Ewok and swayed him to her side. But most likely, you're just going to have to watch out for the Ewoks. They're so dangerous. So let's talk about how you avoid both the Gorax and the Ewoks, because both of them will be big threats for you. First, the Gorax. The Gorax, like I said, you're probably just going to want to avoid it. However, let's say you can't avoid it. Let's say you come face to face with one. Well, Gorax are ginormous, and so a good thing to do would probably be to stay low to the ground. Being high up in the trees, that's not going to help you terribly much unless you kind of like camouflage in the tree. Most likely, stay to the ground and just run from them, but like run in like zigzags and try and juke them because being massive, they aren't going to be as agile as you are. So try and dodge and weave them, try and get into caves, do whatever you can to try and escape them and try to make your size, your small stature compared to the giants, make that an advantage for you. Now, if you want to be extra prepared, there are going to be some ways that you can take down the Goraxes. The easiest way and the best way is going to be setting a trap for them. Now, theoretically, you could dig a giant pit, put some leaves over it, and lull the Gorax into it, and it will fall down and it will be trapped in the pit. And that would work really well, except Goraxes, as I mentioned, are ginormous, and it would be really hard to dig a deep enough pit to contain it. So instead, what I would do is I would do a few things. You could dig holes that aren't deep enough to like trap it, but are deep enough that like if it steps in it, it'll trip itself, something like that. You could, in between trees, you could put like a little webbing that if it were to run through it, it would trap its foot. But the best thing to do is to take a note out of the Ewoks book. The Ewoks, as I mentioned, are the Gorax's enemies, so they have developed traps for the Gorax. In fact, many of the weapons that we see the Ewoks attacking the stormtroopers with in the Battle of Endor, those were all traps meant for the Goraxes. So if you could recreate those, that would help a big time. For example, the swinging logs, that would help a lot because you can hit them right in the head and you can knock them down. The Another good thing to do would be to set up a little tripwire for them to trip over. Just anything you can to use their massive size against them and try and use leverage to push them over. And once you have them on the ground, probably just gonna want to run away. You probably don't have the ability to kill them, but let's say you were able to kill a Gorax. Well, it's probably gonna be disgusting, but if you're desperate enough, that's enough meat for you to survive the rest of your time on Endor. Ewoks. Ewoks are 1000% more dangerous than the Gorax. They are, as I mentioned earlier, highly dangerous. You don't want to mess with Ewoks. However, you're most likely not going to be able to avoid it. Endor is 95% Ewoks. There are so many Ewoks on Endor. You're going to run into one at some point. And most likely that Ewok is not going to like you. Most likely, that Ewok will attack you. So you have to be able to defend yourself against the Ewoks. Out in the daytime, in a wide open field, that is the best place to take on an Ewok. Ewoks are very small, they are very nimble, and they have night vision and they are very good at climbing. So the best way for them to attack you is at night because they can see better than you can, in a heavily forested area because they can climb, and in an area with lots of obstacles, which can help them sneak up on you and use their agility and small size in their favor. So, if you can, clear out a big area. That way the Ewoks won't be able to sneak up on you. They have pretty weak weapons. They have very primitive weapons. So you'll be able to kill them a lot quicker than they could kill you. So it's best to see if you can just engage them in a one-on-one fight with just on even ground with nothing in the Ewok's favor, even if it means giving up defenses in your favor, because you're more powerful than the Ewoks. The only thing that the Ewoks have in their favor is their night vision and their small size, their scent. They have really good smell. So try and be in a wide open area in a clearing, or at least try and be in a clearing whenever you feel like you're going to be attacked by an Ewok, or whenever you feel like you need to be protected from Ewoks. You need to be in a wide open area, because that will protect you from the Ewoks. The other thing you have to watch out for is the Ewoks flanking you. That won't be terribly difficult because you can just spray them with your blaster. And if they come too close, you just use your vibroblade. Whatever you can to keep yourself safe. And remember, Ewoks are really good hunters. They can sneak up on people, they can smell people out, they have incredible night vision. So if they can sneak up on you, you're a goner. So do not let an Ewok sneak up on you. Alright, so let's go over everything that you need to do. First, you need to get water. Second, you need to lay traps to get small animals to eat. Third, you're going to need to have an area somewhere close to your base that you can run to really quickly that has traps for Gorax. And so, if a Gorax is chasing you, you can run to that area and you can set off that trap to defeat the Gorax, whether that's just actually killing them or if it's just knocking them to the ground so you can run away. You're also going to want to have a little shelter put up in the trees, something that is not really noticeable, so probably just a platform for you to sleep in, but high enough that if there's any dangerous little predators on the ground, they won't be able to get to you. And then you're going to want to have a very wide open clearing to do most of your work in to protect yourself from the Ewoks. And then lastly, I don't think I mentioned this, but at night you're going to want to sleep with your blaster and your vibroblade, and you're going to want to practice sleeping lightly, so if an Ewok does jump on you, you can defend yourself from him. So like I said, the Ewoks are very good at night, so the best thing to do is to not engage them at night. So how do you do that? Well, you probably can't protect yourself from the Ewoks attacking you at night all the time. If they're smart, so they will know to attack you at night. So if you are really threatened by the Ewoks, then probably the best thing to do would be to either try to not provoke them and try and keep peace with them, but probably the better thing to do would be to scare them, to make them think that you're too great of a threat for them to take, so that they won't actually attack you at night. And of course, Ewoks are known far and wide for their delicious meat. Ewok jerky is an incredible source of food. If you can kill an Ewok, then you can eat the Ewok jerky and it would be so good. Or you could even just keep the Ewok, preserve it, and sell it once you get rescued, and you'll make a mighty profit. People spend so much money for Ewok jerky. You'll be rich. You won't have to work another day in your life. Speaking of which, if you have followed these tips, then who knows, a week or so later, your distress call finally got through to somebody who cares, and they come to Endor and they rescue you. Maybe you sell off the Ewok jerky that you got. Maybe you teach other people how to survive on Endor. Or maybe you just continue on your life like this never even happened. Whatever the case, you have successfully survived a week on Endor. And so that's what I've got. This is Star Wars Nerds and Geeks signing off. See you all next time.